Thank you very much for joining us here in North Haven this morning. Yesterday, we had a tornado rumble through our town, and we declared a state of emergency last night. We did. We have a crisis situation all over town. There are trees all over fallen, power lines down. Last night, we had 56 roads that were impassable. I'm very grateful today, ladies and gentlemen, for all the support that I have here in North Haven with all of these wonderful people who are beside me and behind me. Today, what we did early this morning, we have gone out on social media. We have put a broadcast emergency update to all of our residents on our Everbridge system, trying to provide information in real-time fashion, and we will continue to do so. We have our governor here today. We have our lieutenant governor, our United States senators, our state senators and state representative. We have members of the UI here today, and I'm going to be introducing everyone to speak individually. And I want to say once again, on behalf of the entire town of North Haven, I'm very grateful for all of the support that you see behind me. And now I'd like to turn it over to our honorable governor, Mr. Ned Lamont. Governor?
Well, thanks, Mike, and good morning, everybody. And here we go again. Just to follow up from what we said last night, yet again, we were hit really hard, and where we were hit was incredibly intense. Branford, North Haven, Hamden, East Haven, a lot of outages. Fortunately, not nearly as extensive as it was a few weeks ago. So what that means is we have, I believe, the manpower here, and we're getting folks yet again from Maine, et cetera, to come into the area. At the same time, the state is backing everybody up. We got General Yvonne here. We got the National Guard. We got civil preparedness here as well. I would also like to say the Public Works Department from all the other towns that were not as hit as severely are coming in. So this is an incredibly collaborative effort. Tony was saying from UI that, in fact, we can't get everything on back here in North Haven in the next 12 hours, but we can try. It won't be due to manpower because we got so much concentrated in such a narrow area that we almost could be tripping over each other. More to the point, we've got everything we need to do this as fast and efficiently as possible. UI has also impressed me because they've had smart meters in place going back decades. And I come a little bit from this world. What a smart meter means is they can remotely see where the damage is. They can remotely see whose lights are off and whose lights are on, so they can target the resources where they need to be. That was not the case with the Eversource going back a few weeks, as we discussed. So those are all things that I think show that we're better prepared to react to this storm. We've got enough manpower given the scale of the storm that we had. And if we've learned anything, Tony, from I have anyway in the last 3 weeks, is that you can't over-communicate. It's to give people the best idea you can, UI, in terms of where the crews are going to be, what the timing may be for coming forward. By the way, if you see the crew, it's a COVID crisis. You don't have to go up. And please, everything, if your lights aren't on, I know you're getting frustrated, the crew is there doing everything they can to get your power back on as soon as we humanly can. So show them the respect and distance that they deserve. More later, but now Susan Beisowitz.
Thank you. Governor, thank you so much. After we tour and view some of the great damage in North Haven, the governor and I and General Yvonne are going to head over to Branford at 11:30, and then at 3 o'clock, General Yvonne of the National Guard and Senator Fazzano will be joining me at station number 3 on Route 80 in East Haven, because East Haven, particularly in the Foxen area, has been hit very, very hard. We want to say thank you to UI for having hundreds of trucks here and people on the ground to help. We really appreciate that. You'll hear more in a minute. But I think it's important for people to know in Branford, in North Haven, in East Haven, please stay away from the wires. Stay in your homes if you have downed trees. because it can be very, very dangerous. And if you have a situation to report, please reach out to your local elected officials, your mayors, to let them know, and also check on your neighbors, because this can be very dangerous for people who don't have electricity. It's still very warm, so check in on your elderly neighbors or people that you know that have medical conditions, and make sure you wear your masks when you are in the vicinity of all these hardworking utility workers who are here to help us get back online quickly. And now I'll introduce Senator Blumenthal.
Thanks. Let me first thank the governor and all the local officials who are here for their leadership in the towns that are representative, and also the state representatives and state senators who are here. First, let me thank the linemen and the crew who are out there right now doing their job, many of them from neighboring states, but a lot of them from here in Connecticut. And second, to the first responders and fire police, all of you, I know they've had a tough night, and they have helped a lot of people through this crisis already. The governor said at the very outset, here we go again, and here we go again. These storms are becoming the new normal. And he is absolutely right. There is no such thing as over-communication. In fact, communication has been sadly lacking in the past. But there's also no such thing as over-preparedness. And preparedness has been even more lacking. I'm very heartened and encouraged by what I've heard from UI so far, from the president of UI, Tony Marone, because they seem to have been prepared. They're on the job, and they're getting power back for this town and others that have been affected. But we still need to keep our eye on the bigger issues, which are we sufficiently prepared for the new normal? Will there be preparedness in the future? We need to learn lessons like a smaller, smarter, more responsive utility than Eversource. Maybe taking UI and some of the lessons that it can provide from its organization. Connecticut operated, Connecticut led, Connecticut based. And Mr. Marone, originally from New Haven, still a resident of Connecticut, is operating his utility in a place he knows and where he lives. So the governor's right that we need the smart technology in other utilities that UI has developed here. I hope that the folks on the job now will restore that power quickly. We are heading from here to Branford, and we're going to be watching in North Haven and Hamden and East Haven, but also Branford, about how quickly power is restored. The measure is in the results. The metrics are in the power restored. We need to see results, and frankly, with respect to Eversource, we need to keep our eye on the ball and ensure refunds for all the people who were damaged and harmed during the last storm. So thank you so much for your leadership, and I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you very much, Senator. Next up, I want to introduce three men whom we've worked very closely together down through many years. These three men not only are colleagues of mine professionally, but they also happen to be personal friends of mine long before we took these careers. So it's my pleasure to introduce Senator Len Fazzano, Senator Martin Looney, and State Representative Dave Iacorino.
Thank you, First Selectman Frieda, and of course, I've known Mike Frieda for a long, long time since we were. I was a few years ahead of him at Notre Dame High School in West Haven. But The first thing I want to say is that when you see Representative Iacorino, Senator Fazzano, and I together, obviously it signals that despite the fact that we're 2 months away from a consequential election, I think we can say there's strong bipartisan opposition to hurricanes and tornadoes. And I think we are certainly together on that in terms of the concern we have for our constituents. And as Senator Blumenthal said, we believe, I think, that we are fortunate, those of us in the UI service area, to have a more responsive utility. Unfortunately, problems have been revealed with Eversource, which represents a much bigger portion of the state, as the hearings earlier this week from PURA and yesterday by the Energy and Technology Committee indicated. But we're here today because we have seen now a hard hit twice within 3 weeks. And whether it is a fundamental change, and the fear is that we're going to have to expect and deal with more of this. We know that more and more people are put at harm's risk when this happens. Unless you are of some means and have some resources, not everyone can afford to buy a generator to have on hand when something like this happens. And it is both a public health crisis and a public safety crisis when something like this occurs. So I think we're all in solidarity here at the state, federal, and municipal government to do all that we can.
Thank you. Yeah, everyone has sort of said what has to be said. The frequency of the storms are becoming an issue. I remember when we had the tornado in Hamden in the 80s, and every late 80s, I'm going to say, and everyone sort of got really nervous of what was going on. And then we had the May 15th, 2018 tornado that went through Hamden and North Haven. And then after that, North Haven has had its fair share in other parts of the state as well. This Saturday, we expect another storm event with the tropical storm coming across and a front coming across, some unpredictable weather. But we are fortunate to have UI that seems to get these storms right and try to get ahead of them and is a quick response. We're very fortunate in that regard that we have that. But it's going to take more. We're going to have to work at the legislature bipartisanly to better enhance our grid, to do things that make sense. Smart metering, as UI has done, we have to start talking about that in other parts of the state. Energy is the lifeblood of our society. It is what it is. So we need to protect it or everything comes to a halt. So with that, stay safe, stay off the roads, let the crew folks do their work. Let's get us back online. And I want to thank everyone on the emergency services, police, fire, and UI for working so hard to get us back on the grid. Thank you. David Iacorino.
Thank you, Lennon. Thank you, everybody, for being here. This storm is unprecedented. The last 3 weeks, we've had 2 major storms. So everything's been said already, but I want to thank General Levon, Air National Guard, the National Guard. They step up for us every single day. Our local police, our fire, our state police, our governor's office, you've done a wonderful job, I think. Of course, Mike Frieda and his team have done a tremendous job. Our public works in North Haven. Everything in life really is a team effort. Putting politics aside, and we should, it's always a team effort. In this case, we want to get our power back up. Thank you, UI. But just come together, help one another, and be there for each other. So thank you all. Be safe, like Len said, and God bless. But be safe and be there for each other. And we'll, like the saying is, through COVID and this, we will get through this, but we have to do it together. So thank you.
Thank you, David. Before I bring up Tony Marone, the president of the UI, I'd like to acknowledge our public safety people who are here, our fire chief and our emergency management director, Chief Paul Januszewski, our deputy chief of our police department, Kevin Glenn, and our deputy chief of our fire department, David Marcarelli. Now it's a pleasure to introduce a man that we go back a long way, back to the first storm since I first took office, the president of the United Illuminating Company, Tony Marone. Tony, thank you, and thank you for the resources you're providing today.
Thank you, First Selectman Frieda. We really appreciate your partnership with us. It is essential for us to be able to do our work, to have the kind of partnership we do with the town of North Haven. I'd like to also thank Governor Lamont, the Lieutenant Governor Bysewicz, Senator Blumenthal, and all the other members of the Assembly who are here today to show their support for our men and women who are working hard right now to restore from this event. I'll just take a moment here. Also I have with me is Charles Eves, who's our Vice President of Electric Operations. We hit the ground running yesterday afternoon as soon as the storm stopped, started understanding what the level of damage was, which is quite significant. I want to draw a bit of a contrast between this storm and Isaias, a very different kind of event. what you'll see, and you can see on a chart that we have behind us here, is it's more of a swath of devastation as opposed to an event that causes widespread tree damage onto our infrastructure. So the way that we restore in some ways is the same, but in other ways is a little bit different. This is more reminiscent of the the tornado that we experienced in Hamden in 2018, where we had concentrated devastation. In this case, the devastation is also concentrated, but a little bit more widespread in terms of the impact on us. So where are we right now? Starting last night, we dedicated crews to be able to make roads safe and passable, working closely with the National Guard that Governor Lamont made available to us. Those activities are underway. They've been underway all night long. We've also began yesterday afternoon to bring in additional resources. Right now, in terms of field resources on the ground, we've got about 440 between line resources as well as tree crews. We've got about another 150 that are on their way in here from our sister companies in New York, NYSEG Electric, and also Central Maine Power. So they're all in either on the ground or en route. So what are we doing today? We've had about 29,000 customers impacted from this event in the UI communities. We've restored down to about 13,000 customers out right now. During the day today, which is a good day for restoration, we'll bring that number down significantly. But I do want to point out that there are parts of the system that the damage is really destruction. So what we need to do is cut and isolate those sections and then rebuild the infrastructure in those areas. That will likely take the next day or two before that activity is complete. We have all the resources we need, and considering the limited area of focus, we've got as many crews as we can safely work in, especially in a COVID environment. But that's really the plan that we have right now, and I appreciate all the support of all the people behind us and the kind words. We are working very, very hard to bring back the power and recover from this, because this is what we do. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Tony. As we come to a close here, ladies and gentlemen, I also would like to acknowledge General Ivan from the National Guard. He's working so closely with our public works and the UI trucks to open up our roads, and we're very grateful to the National Guard here in town. So thank you for joining us. We're going to be looking at some devastation in the town shortly. I appreciate the press being here, and to the residents of North Haven, rest assured that this government, with the resources behind me, has a relentless approach to create positive outcomes over the weekend today. Thank you very, very much.
Mayor, good job.
You got time for some questions?
Go right ahead.
I can ask, in Danbury, we saw a COVID uptick. I believe the governor had said that that may have been somewhat related to areas that had experienced longer-term power outages. So there are many people without power today. What's your message to them, and have we seen that correlation in other communities besides Danbury?
I'll just say COVID continues, with or without these electric outages. And you're right, we found in Danbury there may have been some correlation with the outages, people closer together, obviously multi-generational, infected in families. So we've been careful looking around the rest of the state and urban areas to make sure that's not replicated. These are all within families, so that's complicated. It's still best to keep your distance.
Governor Mike mentioned that he believes the tornado touched down here. Do we have that confirmed that there were tornado touchdowns? Have you talked to the Weather Service?
I'm told the Weather Service, they got choppers going over. They're looking at the type of devastation, how it hit. We'll get a better idea of that. But Tony told me something that really, hit home with me, which is, look, we've seen trees go down. They go down on power. They went down on rail. We've opened up the rail. They went down on Merritt in 91. We've got those opened up. But you know what else? This, if it was a tornado, broke in half telephone poles. No leaves, no branches, just snapped it in half. That gives you an idea of the nature of this twister.
So if these were tornadoes, any plans to ask for federal assistance?
I think we're going to look at that, absolutely.
Governor, you said things like, and I've heard things today, like unprecedented, the new normal. What role do you believe climate change has in these more frequent storms? And what role do you think utilities need to play in electrifying our grid and putting more things underground and becoming more common?
Well, I certainly, we got to be working with the utilities in terms of how weather patterns changing are going to affect the reliability of our electric service. I had been primarily focused on all the substations along the waterfront, given rising tides, what that could mean. We saw that in Sandy down in New York. But now we see the nature of these twisters, 2018, 3 weeks ago today. Obviously, something's going on. We have a lot of ledge in this state as well as a lot of trees. That's not a great combination. Ledge means it's pretty expensive to go underground, but maybe there's some priorities where you can go underground, at least for those major distribution hubs.
Can I just add that we should call this what it is. This is global warming. This is climate change. It's one tropical storm and weather event, one after another. We're getting prepared for another weather event later this weekend. So I think it's incumbent upon all of us who are in local, state, and elective office to work with the power companies to make sure that we have communication and that we are prepared. And I just want to say thank you to UI for literally having hundreds of crews on the ground right now, because that will address some of the health issues that were just raised. That's really important.
You know, you'd have to have your head buried in the sand to avoid the conclusion that climate change and global warming are contributing in a very major way. In fact, probably the cause of this kind of new normal. And you'd have to be living on another planet to deny climate change as a cause, which means we need to be prepared. We need to see the obvious before our eyes. And fortunately, after Sandy, along the coast, the rebuilding was much more structurally sound. But in terms of the smart meters, the preparedness beforehand, preparing for the worst, even as you hope for the best, has to be the rule. UI prepared much better than Eversource. Let's just be very blunt. In this last storm, UI prepared for the worst. That didn't eliminate the storm, but it helped prepare for the damage that would result for it and to restore the power. Eversource hoped for the best, and it prepared for the best. It made a bad bet. We should not be paying that debt, and the best way to prepare for the future is to take steps against climate change. It's not just talk, it has to be action. And the insurance companies and power companies all, I think, are seeing that reality, and the people of America should too, because it's not just we in Connecticut, it's the Gulf, which has just gone through another tropical storm, near hurricane, and we're going to see more. We're only at the beginning of the hurricane season.
So can we get Tony to go off of that? I mean, what is it about UI that helps you guys be more nimble than a larger utility company? And I'm also interested in getting your opinion on if you support the governor's proposal for incentive, for performance-based incentives.
Sure. Well, there's a couple questions there. But, you know, at UI, so I've been with the company for 33 years now, and I think that we've always had a focus on we've got to keep the customer first in everything we do. It doesn't mean we're always going to get everything right, and many times we may not. When it comes to emergency preparedness, and I always say to our people, we're only as good as our performance during an event like this in a storm. On the days when it's a blue sky and everything's fine, people aren't paying attention. So when the weather is coming, and in cases like Isaias, we saw that coming, and we prepared a little bit on the conservative side. The event was worse than we expected it to be, but we had prepared a little bit more conservatively. That worked out to be a good idea. In a case like yesterday, we saw that coming, but with a lot less notification and preparation. So you have to be prepared. You've got to have the resources available. And what's most important is to have a robust process that you exercise regularly. Unfortunately, we're exercising that process in real life as opposed to practice exercises these days. But it's been our motto and our culture, and we're going to continue to do that.
Performance-based incentives?
Yeah, so on performance-based incentives, we're not opposed of or concerned about performance-based incentives. I think for me, I look at it as that they need to be structured in a way where it makes sense for the utility and for customers. It needs to be a balanced approach. And as long as it's a balanced approach, then there's some good models of that around the country. We look forward to that. We believe we need to excel in our performance and should be rewarded accordingly. So we're not afraid of that.
And even if you break up Eversource, as I've advocated ought to be considered, you still need performance-based compensation for executives and performance-based rates of return. The two go together. No matter what the entity, it should be performance-based. That's our capitalist system, after all. In every other industry, the rewards are based on how well you deliver the service or the product. In this industry, it's a monopoly that has a guaranteed rate of return and guaranteed compensation for the executives.
Okay. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And we're going to be leaving now, like I said, to review some of the devastation in town. I thank you for your attendance today. Thank you. Have a good day.